This presentation is on Naegleria fowleri, and this is a protist pathogen. One of the key characteristics to note is that it can differentiate between three morphologically distinct stages. The trophozoite stage is the infectious stage. It is present under ideal conditions, and it is both metabolically and reproductively active. The trophozoite can then differentiate between two other stages. The flagellate is the motile form, and that is present when nutrient levels are low in the environment. And the flagella enables it to move to a more nutrient-rich part of the environment. The trophozoite can also differentiate into the cyst form, and this is present under severely adverse environmental conditions, and it is metabolically inactive. The figure to the right shows what each of these three stages looks like, and it also shows the trophozoite differentiating between the two other stages. N. fowleri is a member of the family Falcamphidae. It is a uninucleate and free-living amoeba. It contains a nucleolus that forms polar masses during mitosis. Typically, N. fowleri prey upon cyanobacteria, and when they infect humans, they feed on brain tissue. They feed using structures known as food cups, and these have a suction-like action. It has also been found that the presence of peptones in the environment promotes growth. It has the ability to adapt to high salinity levels. This is what enables it to exist in human tissue, which has a salinity level of about 0.9%. The infectious dose, or ID50, is approximately 1 cyst, so it has a very low infectious dose. The key genetic feature to note is cathepsin B homologue, and this produces cysteine proteases, and these enable it to degrade the host's extracellular matrix and cross the blood-brain barrier, thus enabling it to infect the brain. So it is found in both warm soil and fresh water. It has a strong preference for warmer environments, and if you look to the map to the right, you can see that it's primarily found in countries near the equator. It particularly is found in the southern states of North America and the Indian subcontinent. However, you can see that it does have a global distribution. The optimal growth temperature occurs at 37 degrees Celsius, and it is found in both natural habitats and urban zones. Natural habitats include lakes, rivers, ponds, essentially any natural fresh body of water, and urban zones include water distribution systems, and fowleri can grow in biofilms in pipelines. Urban zones can also include unchlorinated pools and jacuzzis. So N. fowleri is an opportunistic pathogen that causes the disease primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, or PAM. PAM is a very serious disease with a rapid onset of symptoms. The symptoms can occur anywhere between 24 hours to 8 days after exposure. It has a very high case fatality rate between 95 and 97%. The symptoms include fever, chills, severe headache, intracranial pressure, and vomiting. The symptoms are very similar to that of viral or bacterial meningitis, such as severe neck stiffness, photophobia, mental confusion, and seizures. Some more rare symptoms that have been reported are arrhythmia and death of myocardial tissue. In order to diagnose an N. fowleri infection, you'll need to do a cerebral spinal fluid analysis, in which you'll be looking for abnormalities in the color of the fluid, elevated polymorphonuclear cell levels, and the presence of trophozoites in the CSF. So this is a very rare disease with only about 142 reported cases in the United States and only 260 reported cases worldwide. If you look to the figure to the right, you can see the worldwide distribution of reported PAM cases. You can see that the United States and Pakistan have a disproportionately large number of reported cases. However, it is important to note that it is likely underreported in developing countries that have less advanced diagnostic tools. So some at-risk groups are children and young adults. This is because they have a more permeable cribriform plate. So when N. fowleri enters the nose, it must cross the cribriform plate in order to reach the brain. So if that is more permeable, it can more easily reach the brain. The next at-risk group is Pakistanis, and this is due to the Islamic religious practice known as ablution, which involves frequent nasal irrigation. The next at-risk group are those living in developing countries, and this is due to less sanitary water distribution systems, because like I had mentioned, N. fowleri can exist within those if they are not properly treated. So, PAM is a non-communicable disease, meaning that it cannot be transmitted between humans. There are only two types of infections that can occur. One being wet infections, and this is when water contaminated with N. fowleri forcefully enters the nasal cavity. This can happen during recreational water activities such as diving, in which water is splashed into the nose, swimming in a contaminated water source such as a canal or an unchlorinated pool, water park, or jacuzzi. This can also occur through nasal irrigation such as the popularly used neti pot, and like I had mentioned, the religious practice of ablution. And these pictures to the right show an example of each of those activities that increase your risk of an N. fowleri infection. The other type of infection that can occur is called a dry infection. This is significantly less common, and this is when cyst-laden dust is inhaled through the individual's nose. So there is no cure or proven treatment for PAM. However, there are several off-label drugs that have been successful in a very limited number of cases. One of these treatments is miltefosine. This is traditionally used as an anti-cancer and anti-leishmania drug. The mechanism against PAM is unknown. However, in 2013, 3 cases were treated with miltefosine, 2 of which survived. However, one of the patients had severe brain damage. Another treatment option is amphotericin B. Traditionally used as an antifungal treatment, it can be used to treat an N. fowleri infection because N. fowleri has a similar sterile biosynthesis pathway to that of fungi. So AMP-B binds to ergosterol within the cell membrane, creates the formation of pores, alters the permeability, and results in cell death. However, AMP-B is needed in high doses to treat PAM, and this is bad because that can cause renal toxicity. And then I included a picture of the chemical structure of amphotericin B. So, also one more thing to note about treatments is really the key to a successful treatment is early diagnosis and treatment. So preventative measures that people can take include avoiding swimming in potentially contaminated water sources. I've mentioned this, but this is a very important preventative measure: not swimming in unchlorinated pools or jacuzzis, canals, very muddy water. Another prevention tip is to not kick up sediment while swimming in lakes, rivers, ponds, etc., because this could increase the presence of N. fowleri in the water, because like I had mentioned, N. fowleri does exist in soil and mud. Another preventative measure is to wear a nose plug, especially when engaging in recreational water activities that have a high chance of having water splash up your nose. You could also just simply not submerge your head underwater. And this next point is really key. You need to be sure to only use distilled water for nasal irrigation. And this is because that is the only way you can assure that the water is not contaminated with N. fowleri. So in terms of management, public health officials need to consistently monitor water sources for the presence of N. fowleri. The best way to do this is through quantitative polymerase chain reaction. Another key with management is education and public service announcements. So here I've included a CDC resource on safe ritual nasal rinsing, and that would be targeted for people who are doing ablution, like I had mentioned, how to safely do that. And the next resource is a list of do's and don'ts for people who are living in an area with a declared contaminated water source. Lastly, here's my list of references that I used throughout this presentation.